A ship is found sailing through the Atlantic Ocean. Sails up, cargo untouched. The captain's logbook still open on his desk. The crew's belongings in their cabins. A child's toy on the floor. And not a single person on board. No distress signal, no bodies, no blood, no note. Just an empty ship moving through the ocean as if everyone on it had simply stopped existing. This wasn't a legend. It wasn't a myth. It happened. And the part that should unsettle you most isn't the 10 people vanished. It's what they left behind when they went. On December 4th, 1872, the crew of a British merchant ship called the Dei Gratia spotted a vessel in the distance behaving strangely. It was moving, but not under control. Drifting, weaving, unsteered. They hailed it. No response. They hailed it again. Silence. The captain, David Morehouse, sent 3 men across by lifeboat to investigate. When they climbed aboard, the ship was empty. The vessel was the Mary Celeste, an American cargo brigantine that had left New York Harbor 27 days earlier, carrying 10 people and over 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. None of those 10 people were anywhere on it. But here's what made investigators stop cold. The ship was fine. The hull wasn't breached. The cargo was largely intact. There was food in the galley. Clothing was hanging in the cabins. The captain's logbook was still there. His wife's belongings were still there. Their 2-year-old daughter's belongings were still there. Whatever caused 10 people to leave this vessel, it wasn't a fire. It wasn't a flood. It wasn't a structural failure. The Mary Celeste was, by every measure, perfectly sailable. So why did they go? The logbook gave investigators the last known timestamp. The final entry was dated November 25th, 9 days before the ship was found. At that point, the Mary Celeste had been logged near the Azores, roughly 400 miles from where the Dei Gratia encountered it. That means the ship had been sailing without a crew, completely unmanned, for over a week, through open ocean, and arrived in better shape than some crude vessels of the era. That detail alone is strange, but it's not the strangest thing they found. When investigators began working through the ship systematically, the clues started stacking up in ways that didn't fit any clean explanation. The ship's only lifeboat was gone, not destroyed, not floating nearby, simply absent. A long rope was found trailing behind the ship in the water, frayed at the end as though it had snapped under tension. The ship's compass had been knocked from its mount and was damaged. The hatch covers to the cargo hold were open and lying on deck, and critically, the ship's sextant, chronometer, and navigation papers were missing. That last detail matters. Whoever left this ship took the tools they would need to navigate. They didn't jump overboard in a panic. They made a decision. They packed for survival, and they left with a plan. Something just went wrong with that plan. The first theory that emerged was the most dramatic: foul play. Captain Morehouse of the Dei Gratia knew Captain Briggs personally. Morehouse stood to collect a substantial salvage reward for bringing in an abandoned ship. The British inquiry looked hard at this angle, hard enough that Morehouse was questioned extensively, and his salvage reward was reduced as a mark of suspicion. But there was no evidence to support it. No blood, no signs of violence, no damage suggesting a struggle or attack. Every surface of that ship was examined. Nothing. Morehouse was eventually cleared, and the foul play theory quietly fell apart, though it took the press considerably longer to let it go. Piracy was also considered, but the cargo remained untouched, and there was no evidence of an attack. The ship was simply too undisturbed. Which brings us to the theory that most researchers today find most credible, and the piece of evidence that quietly underpins it. 9 of the 1,700 barrels of alcohol were found empty, not leaking, not broken, empty. And those 9 barrels were made of red oak, a wood significantly more porous than other materials used in the remaining barrels. Red oak doesn't contain liquid the same way other woods do. It breathes. It allows vapor to seep outward, even while the liquid itself stays in place. Investigators believe those 9 barrels had been slowly off-gassing alcohol vapor into the sealed cargo hold for weeks, and at some point during the voyage, that buildup reached a threshold. What followed was likely a vapor explosion, sudden, loud, forceful enough to blow the hatch covers clean off the deck. But critically, non-destructive. No fire, no structural damage, just an enormous pressure release and a sound that on a wooden ship in the middle of the ocean would have felt like the beginning of the end. Picture what that moment must have been like. You're on a vessel carrying 1,700 barrels of alcohol. Something below decks detonates. No flames, but a concussive blast, loud enough to shake the whole ship. The hatch covers are gone. The compass is knocked off its mount, and you have no way of knowing whether the fire is coming in the next 10 seconds or the next 10 minutes. The theory is that Captain Briggs made a decision in that moment. Get everyone off the ship, tie the lifeboat to the stern with a long rope, and wait at a safe distance to see what happens. It was a reasonable call. If the ship exploded, they'd survive. If it didn't, they could reboard. The rope trailing behind the Mary Celeste, the one found frayed and snapped, is the evidence that this is almost certainly what happened. Someone tied off, someone waited, and then the rope broke. After that, in open Atlantic waters, a lifeboat with 10 people and no ship to return to had almost no chance. But even this theory, the most complete, most evidence-supported explanation available, leaves questions that have never been answered. Captain Benjamin Briggs was experienced, cautious, and respected. He had crossed the Atlantic before and was traveling with his wife and young daughter. Yet he still chose to leave a ship that appeared perfectly capable of reaching its destination. And then there's the detail about the logbook that never quite sits right. The last entry placed the ship near the Azores on November 25th. The day Gratia found it on December 4th, 400 miles away, moving in a direction that, across 9 days of unmanned drift, traces a strangely consistent path. Not the chaotic wandering you'd expect from a vessel with no one at the helm, almost as if it had been steered. Almost. The child's clothes were still folded in the cabin. The family's belongings were untouched. Whatever happened, it happened fast enough that no one went back below decks to collect anything personal. No one grabbed a coat. No one took a photograph or a letter. They left everything, as if they expected to return in an hour. 10 people boarded the Mary Celeste in New York Harbor in November of 1872. The ship arrived at Gibraltar without a single one of them. No survivor ever came forward. No body was ever recovered from the crew or the Briggs family. No wreckage from the lifeboat was ever found. No letter, no deathbed confession, no message in a bottle, nothing. The Mary Celeste sailed for another 12 years before eventually being deliberately wrecked in an insurance fraud scheme. But the 10 people who vanished from it never got a conclusion. The vapor explosion theory is logical. It fits the physical evidence better than anything else proposed in 150 years of investigation. Most researchers accept some version of it, but acceptance isn't the same as certainty, and certainty is the one thing this case has never offered anyone. What we know is this: 10 people left a sound ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and were never seen again. They took their navigation tools. They tied a rope to the stern. And somewhere between that moment and the day Gratia found the Mary Celeste drifting alone, something went wrong that no one survived to describe. More than 150 years later, the evidence suggests what may have happened, but nobody knows for certain. And that's why the Mary Celeste remains one of history's greatest mysteries.